On this week's Global View, after 2 weeks of negotiations, the United Nations Climate Summit, or COP15, ended December 18. The five-nation agreement said carbon emissions should be reduced enough to keep the increase in average global temperature to below 2 degrees Celsius. Many denounced the agreement for being non-binding and setting no overall target for curbing greenhouse gas emissions.
2 weeks of laborious negotiations on a climate agreement ended December 18th with a political deal brokered by U.S. President Barack Obama in China as well as other emerging powers. The five-nation agreement includes a method for verifying reductions of heat-trapping gases. It also requires that industrial countries list their individual targets and developing countries actions that they will take to cut the pollution that causes global warming by specific amounts. The document also said carbon emissions should be reduced enough to keep the increase in average global temperatures to below 2 degrees Celsius. It was, however, denounced by many for being non-binding and setting no overall target for curbing greenhouse gas emissions.
For Tuvalu, we think it's important that we have science-based results that lead us to reducing emissions so that we reach temperature levels well below 1.5 degrees. Anything above spells the end for Tuvalu.
The outcome of the final preliminary session, December 19th, was thrown into question as a string of developing nations began to protest what they called an inadequate and non-binding text.
Anunció un acuerdo que no existe.
4 hours ago, President Obama announced an agreement that is non-existent. This shows a lack of respect toward the international community. He is behaving like an imperial chief. The emerging outcome was a disappointment to those who had anticipated that the Copenhagen Accord would be turned into a legally binding treaty. Instead, it envisions another year of negotiations and leaves myriad details to be decided.
In this particular point, the text agreed today falls far short of our expectations.
We should have achieved more, but this is enough of an agenda, a roadmap, a rucksack full of good ideas that can help us to the next stage.
Some countries, however, welcome the agreement as a progressive first step.
Having taken that first step, I hope we can move quickly to the next step, which is to get a legally binding treaty.
We've had a result which underpins action in the 4 areas that I listed before. That represents substantive progress on where we were.
Environmental groups call the 2 degree Celsius agreement a meaningless aspiration.
This is a disaster. This is basically, this represents several steps backwards with respect or in comparison with Kyoto. There is no substance in this. There is no commitment whatsoever to translate this political accord into a legally binding treaty. There is no longer any reference to science.
À mes yeux, il manque 2 choses.
To me, there are 2 things missing. The 50% objective in 2050, which we would have preferred to be kept. But that was not possible. From our point of view, this is a deception, even though we ourselves are keeping the 80% objective.
Est-ce que je suis clair dans ça?
Outside the conference hall, more than 100 protesters staged a demonstration to voice their anger, calling it a climate shame.
Our future is in your hands!
The great leaders have flown in as if they're coming in to shape the future, and they've really done nothing.
U.S. delegation said Washington would press the world to come up with a climate aid fund amounting to $100 billion a year by 2020. A move that was quickly followed by an offer from China to open its reporting on actions to reduce carbon emissions to international review. TITV Weekly.